Welcome.
I do.
Looks like we have quite a few people interested in learning about Tableau, so I'm delighted to see you here. How many of you actually have tried Tableau or are using it? Just raise your hand so we have a sense. So there are quite a few hands. I know across the UW system campuses, probably at least half of the campuses have somebody dabbling with Tableau or actually using it. So this is the all-day meeting of the afternoon session of the BI core team. I'm Kathy Luker in the Office of Quality Improvement here on the Madison campus, and I facilitate the BI core team, which is all UW system campuses that use shared software for business intelligence, reporting, analytics. We had a morning session on our current tool, interactive reporting, which we will be moving off of at some point in the not too distant future. And there has been a lot of interest in data visualization with Tableau. And I am really pleased to introduce Sarah Nell from AE Business Solutions. Sarah is a local Wisconsin resource. She's in Milwaukee. She heads up the Milwaukee Tableau user group. She is also a Tableau certified trainer and consultant. So it's great to have that resource and AE Business Solutions here in the state. She has presented before and helped people here on the Madison campus in a consulting role with questions regarding Tableau. So that's a good resource if you're interested. So I am going to now have Sarah take over.
Am I on? Can you hear me? Hi. Thank you, Kathy. Wow. I actually went to college to be a teacher for first and second graders, and this definitely does not compare to a small classroom. Yeah, this is a little intimidating, seeing all of you in front of me, but it's exciting at the same time. So, Kathy, thank you so much, and thank you for having me here, too. This is really a great opportunity, and I'm quite an evangelist when it comes to Tableau as well, so I'm happy to be able to share with you some of my knowledge today. I want to make this interactive as possible, too. I want you to participate. If you've used Tableau, if you have a question that comes up during the presentation, ask. If you haven't used Tableau and you still have a question, please just ask as well. I don't want you to feel like you're not part of this. So, to start off with a little interactivity, you guys have a bunch of numbers up here that you may have noticed when you came into the room today. So I want everyone and the people who are watching this over streaming as well, try and count the nines. I'll give you about 10 seconds. And shout it out when you think you have it. 10, 14, 1. All right, let's see if I can make this a little easier for you. Try to count the nines now. Give you a few seconds to do that. All right, thank you. So you had your first introduction to visual analytics just by doing that. I usually don't like to quote things too frequently, but this to me, visual analytics is the representation and presentation of data that exploits our visual perception abilities in order to amplify cognition. And that's kind of why we're here today. We're here to learn about visual analytics and how Tableau plays a role in that. Not just that, but also helping to foster data discovery. Here's our agenda for today. And once again, huge lecture hall, and I'm short as it is, so it's like looking up at this huge screen. Wow. All right, so just some of the things that we're going to go through. I'm going to kind of give you a look at what's going on in BI today. Who here in the room is in BI, actually? Okay, so who works with data all the time? All right, if you work with data, hopefully almost everything we talk about today will be relevant to you. We're going to talk about BI then in higher education as well. And I have a bunch of examples of different colleges across not just the US, but also the UK that are using Tableau today and the different uses that they have on their campuses. Then we're actually going to go into some building of visualizations within Tableau as well. And I'm going to show you some of the things that you might see when we go into the Tableau for higher education. We're going to show you how to build some of those. And then how to create interactivity, how to get people to use the dashboards or different worksheets that you can create. Me, this is me. In case you couldn't hear before, my name is Sarah Nell. And today, I am the Tableau practice leader for AE Business Solutions. And AE Business Solutions is here in Madison, Wisconsin, but we're also in other parts of Wisconsin as well. I personally am from Milwaukee, but I travel to Wisconsin quite frequently. We have multiple clients here who use Tableau as well. And I go to the different client sites and help them learn about Tableau. I'm also one of only 86 global trainers on Tableau itself, and actually the only trainer in Wisconsin. So I have been traveling quite extensively because there has been such a demand for Tableau. My background was actually in workforce analytics. I used to work for Manpower Group, and I was one of the founding members of their analytics team. I was with Manpower for 8 years, and I created a number of different reporting suites for clients while I was there. I want to talk a little bit about where I also came from, because I think it's important, and the majority of why I'm here today is also Tableau. I'm a very big believer in how Tableau can actually change your entire reporting experience, and that it can only make it for the better. I used to do, who uses Excel in this room? All right, that's good to know. I used to do almost all of my reporting in Excel. Every client that we had at Manpower, every single report that we used started in Excel. And we would create different pivot tables and the different pivot graphs that would go along with that. And that's what we would deliver to a client. Capture it, put it in PowerPoint, off it goes in email. So I was tasked, once the analytics department started at Manpower, to find a solution that worked for the entire organization, not just the US, but globally as well. After looking at a multitude of different solutions, I tried Tableau out, and it completely, I would not be here today were it not for that moment of choosing Tableau. Tableau actually decided to use me as a customer use case, and they also chose me to be a speaker at their conference last year. And I talk about being a believer in Tableau, but the conference was in September of last year, and if I had not been a speaker at that conference, I wouldn't have become friends with my wonderful boss over here, Michael Johnson. And if that had not happened, then next month, when I came back from the conference, Manpower did massive layoffs of a lot of their IT staff. And there was such a demand for Tableau in the market at that time, I had no trouble finding a job. But I also had no trouble finding a job, staying local, doing what I had grown to love, and that was Tableau. This was actually a quote from my use case, from my director at the time. And this is true. It took 5 people, 3 weeks to create a reporting solution, and we were able to whittle that down. And I was able to create solutions for over 100 clients in just 2 days. And that's me in an interview at the conference last year. That was the only picture I could find from the conference last year that I could share. So, yes. All right. I'm also very heavily involved in the Tableau community, and I see some familiar faces out in the crowd. If those of you who have attended the Tableau user group here in Madison can raise your hand. Yep. I knew there were a few of you out there. I recognized you. You have a wonderful resource here in Madison called the Tableau user group. And you don't need to know Tableau to actually attend the user group. It's for everyone. If you have an interest in Tableau, go to your user group. It's a free resource with people from every different industry within your metropolitan area who are willing to help you learn and foster that learning with these groups. Kathy had mentioned, I am the Milwaukee user group leader, and our last turnout, I was so excited because we actually had over 70 people. When we first started it a year ago, we only had 40 people. So within our small section of the state here, between Milwaukee and Madison, Tableau is literally growing like a weed. There are people who are picking it up every week, want to know what's going on with it, and can talk about how it's changing their analytics, how it's changing their entire reporting experience. I mentioned I was a speaker at the conference last year. Is anyone here going to the conference at all? Kathy, yep. I see Mary's hand over there. Anyone else that I missed? All right, 2 of you. Well, I encourage you to go. It's a load of fun. I'm sure Kathy and Mary will come back with some great stories regardless. We also held something back in April called the Viz Wars. I know that some people from here attended that as well. Anyone hear about Viz Wars? All right, I see. Are you the Barbs? You are the Barbs. I talk about you all the time. That's great. So I'm glad that you guys are here. Barb and Barb from UW Green Bay up there, they are my perfect Tableau use case. And I'm so glad that you are here because they actually attended Viz Wars. Who knows what Iron Chef is? All right, so they unveil the secret ingredient. Then you have 60 minutes to make something delicious with the secret ingredient that you have never used before. And we took the same approach to Viz Wars. Here's a data set that you have never used before, and now we're giving you 60 minutes with Tableau to build something. And Barb and Barb, or as I call you, the Barbs, attended Viz Wars, and they had never used Tableau before, right? All right, and they dove headfirst into this competition. And they had people who had been using Tableau for quite some time, but they just decided they were going to try it out. And they actually received an honorable mention for that. So I actually talk about you guys, so it's great to see you again. We also have a blog that we just started at my company called Tablowza, and it's kind of a funny name, but I actually have a blog post out there on what the name really means. It's a combination of Tableau and wowza, so it just kind of stuck in our heads, so we kind of went with it. But it's kind of a how-to blog for the beginner, and we'll also have some information on some of the higher-level advanced analytics that you can do with it as well. So let's talk about BI a bit, because that's kind of why you guys are here, right? Because you are learning about the different things that are happening in BI and the different trends. And I want to talk about what's going on this year as far as BI. And this is a document that Tableau puts out every year to go over agnostically what is going on in BI. Who knows what a data scientist is? Yep, that's kind of my reaction when I first saw this. I'm like, what the heck is a data scientist? But it's the end of data scientists. So I actually wanted to find out what data scientists are. And they actually are the ones who are solving those complex problems. They're the ones who use statistics, who have that higher level of understanding when it comes to math. And if you look at the Venn diagram I have up here, you can kind of see where data science falls within it. You have hacking skills that no one will ever admit to, right? You also have the math and statistic knowledge, but you also have the substantive experience as well. And they fall in between all of that. Well, Tableau is something where you don't need to be a data scientist anymore. You can actually just understand something as simple as Excel and jump right in and use it. And it's really something like that that is bringing the end to data scientists. Who's heard about the cloud? Yep, everyone hears about the cloud. It's going mainstream. So a lot more businesses are catching up with it and putting it to use and making sure that it's part of their suite of products that they offer to clients today. Big data, doing the same thing. Who knows what big data is? It's kind of elusive, though, what big data is, but big data is data today. Data is growing exponentially every day right now, and that's what's going on. It's making it Amazon Redshift is actually addressing this, and they have changed their data warehouse to be a cloud service instead. And Amazon Redshift is based off of a different storage type than what the traditional data warehouse is. And it's based off of being able to have business intelligence more accessible, analytics more accessible. But not just that, but it's cloud-based as well. And now we have agile business intelligence extending its lead. Everything we're talking about today is pretty much going to be agile business intelligence. These are the 5 features that are to be part of agile business intelligence. Visualizations, data source agility, domain-specific knowledge, cloud support, like we just talked about, and then distribution channel agility. Predictive analytics. This was my big aha moment today. I already knew about predictive analytics. I've been involved in predictive analytics for a number of years as well. But when I wanted to make it something that people who potentially have never used it have understood, I went out to Google, everyone's friend. Everyone uses Google. And then I actually came across a presentation from the University of Central Florida. And I was so excited because I did not include Tableau in my search at all, but I found Tableau just by looking for predictive analytics. And they are actually creating a model within Tableau to predict if students will pass or fail. In this case, I believe that it's pass math. And when I was back in school, that was a very hard thing for me to do. And now I wish I would have paid attention a lot more to math. Because I use it every day. So they lied. You do use math every day. But without even searching out Tableau and predictive analytics, I came across a college that was actually using it. That to me spoke volumes. That was my huge aha. Or what about embedding BI? Does anyone know what embedding BI is? Yep. A lot of these terms, they're kind of hard to put your mind around them and understand exactly what they are. So here, it talks about put your data where people use it, in the systems that you use on a daily basis. So when I worked at Manpower, we used SharePoint. Put your data, put your Tableau out on SharePoint, make it accessible to people. Storytelling. Tableau is about storytelling. I can talk about all these different features that Tableau addresses, but the thing that is changing with BI and data, to me, this is the big thing right here. You're telling a story with your data. You're making something accessible that hasn't been accessible before. It's making sense to people. Everyone was read stories as a child. You still talk about that. Who reads stories to their children today? No, really? That is for who has kids? Let's ask that. Root cause analysis right there. Okay. So, but I mean, that was one thing that my mom always did. She read me stories. And so that really fostered my love of reading for the rest of my life. And now as an adult, I'm passing on that love of storytelling through data. And it truly is a love, actually. And it's accessible now through BI, mobility, through your phones, iPads. At my company, we actually just rolled out our own Tableau server, and 3 weeks ago now, I believe. And we actually make it accessible through iPads. So every Monday, we have a sales meeting, and our salespeople come with their iPads, and they can access our Tableau servers through iPads. So they can see exactly how they're performing week by week. And they can be at a client and bring up a visualization, and it's right there. Who has Facebook? There were a few hands that were not raised. I was actually expecting everyone to raise their hand on that one. But there's a wealth of data through social media today. And actually, Facebook is one of the biggest users of Tableau as well. So almost all of you who raised your hands when you said you have a Facebook, a lot of that is being visualized through Tableau today. There's quite a few customers that you don't know about, but Tableau does impact your day-to-day life more than you think it does. NoSQL is the new Hadoop. NoSQL is actually unstructured data. It's not a relational database anymore. And Hadoop is kind of taking that data and it allows it to be consumed by people in a way that it hasn't been before. So you can take videos or XML files and you can actually read that as data. You don't need to have a SQL database anymore in order to actually visualize your data or create analysis around it. So those are the trends for 2014, and I'm sure next year that is going to be different. But that has actually, I do see that quite frequently, a lot of those changes that have been happening in 2014. And I feel like Tableau actually addresses quite a few of those. And I wanted to talk to you about the new approach to BI and how Tableau approaches BI now. So those are the trends. Those were not put together by Tableau. Those were actually agnostic white papers that were put together. And now I want to talk about the 6 attributes of BI through Tableau. Speed, I talked about connecting to Excel. And when I connected to Excel, my example I like to use is pivot tables. When I used to have to create pivot tables in Excel, just for a simple one, no filters built, only one row, one column, I brought over. I counted the number of clicks it took to create when I was in Excel, and it took 12 clicks. When I did the exact same, once I connected to my data in Tableau, it took 2 clicks. So imagine when you have to create sheet after sheet of pivot tables, how much time and efficiency that creates for you, how fast you can get your results with your data. Self-reliance. You can create all of that yourself. Those 2 clicks were all me. I didn't have to go back to IT. I didn't have to have someone else do that for me. I could do that. You're now relying on yourself to create visualizations and BI solutions. Visual discovery. In those 2 clicks, not only do I have a pivot table, but I also could create a graph where I can actually start seeing insight into my data instantaneously. I don't have to wait anymore. I don't have to create a bunch of different solutions. Even if I have different data, Excel or SQL, I can access it and create visual discovery right away. Like I just mentioned, what if I have a bunch of different databases? I can connect to it. I have a customer down in Schaumburg, and they have a Netezza box where they land most of their data. And it was a little daunting at first when they told me how many rows of data they had. And it was 72 billion rows of data. That is a heck of a lot of data. And it literally took me less than 2 minutes to load an entire dashboard of data for them. And if you would have done, you can't do that in Excel. That's just not an option in Excel because you have the row limit when you're in Excel. So 72 billion rows of data, and I was able to create visual discovery within 2 minutes. You can involve everyone. You're in a meeting. I created that visual with the 72 billion rows of data. I'm talking to my boss. He wants to know what's going on with sales from last year compared to this year. I can do that on the fly now. I can actually answer the questions the moment he asks them. Flexible configurations. You don't have to stay with one static configuration. I talked about the different clients who use Tableau. I mentioned Facebook. But then Facebook isn't going to be the same solution that universities use. You're going to have different campuses, and what about us? We're a sales organization. We're not going to require the same setup that a university or Facebook has. One solution does not fit all, and Tableau accounts for that and how they build their solutions. So here are those 5 attributes of Agile BI again, and I wanted to show this next to Tableau's 6 attributes. All right, so now on the left we have the 5 that are considered Agile BI, things that are going to help you to create a robust analytics or business intelligence solution. You have advanced visualizations. If you look over on the 6 attributes of Tableau, that's exactly what Tableau is. It's a visual analysis tool. It's about data discovery. Or what about the data source agility? You don't have to connect to just one data source. You can connect to multiple data sources and mash them together now. Domain-specific knowledge, cloud support, distribution channel agility. I feel like that's answered in all of those. To me, I feel like the 6 attributes of Tableau's BI solutions, of how they're approaching BI today, those fall within the 5 attributes that are being talked about in BI institutes across the world. Speed, 10 to 100 times faster. I can actually connect to data and have a complete solution by the end of the day. I can now do that with data. I couldn't do that with Excel. It took me 5 weeks to put solutions together for customers before, and now it takes me hours instead. So connecting to data, it's honestly the click of a button. That's all it is. Self-reliance. Who here knows about Cornell University? Yep. That's good. I'm glad to hear that, because they actually use Tableau today. And here's a little blurb on a case study that Tableau did on them, on what happened when they started implementing Tableau in their analysis. And the savings at the bottom are in the 75 to 90% range. That's enormous. So now you have fewer IT resources who need to maintain this. They help with the data, but business analysts, you're the ones visualizing it. You're now a team that works together for the end product. Business people serve themselves. You create those reports, those dashboards. You put the power in the hands of the business user. Then what about visual discovery? Fast, easy to use visual interfaces. So the majority of you raised your hand when I asked about who uses Excel. If you know Excel, it's one of these tools where you can actually jump right in and start using it. You have rows, you have columns. There's a lot of things that are very similar to how you would actually use Excel today, and that was done for a reason, to make this part easy for you, so you could start your visual discovery. You can look at your typical spreadsheet at the top here, but now look at all these different things visually that you can create from it. You can create a scatter plot or mapping. You can't do maps in Excel today, but you can do a line graph. But now you can create interactivity with that line graph. Or Tableau's answer to pie charts, when you want to look at the whole, parts of a whole, now you can look at tree maps. And I actually have an example for you later on how to use tree maps. And here's another customer, Wells Fargo. A well-crafted, thoughtful visualization makes that light bulb go off. And I always think of the cartoons that we used to watch on Saturday mornings, and Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and all those. But you always had kind of those cheesy little things, the visual, that light bulb going off. And that's exactly what I feel like Tableau does. It gives you those aha moments. It gives you those light bulb moments that you have, because suddenly you can see what's going on with your data. Large and diverse data sets. So that 72 billion rows of data I connected to in Netezza, what if there's data I need outside of that? What if I have my goals for the year in a different Excel spreadsheet instead? I can actually connect them now. I don't need to have someone else do that for me, because Tableau can do that. I can connect up to multiple different data sources, and they don't need to sit in the same database. But I can also do my own joins on data now too. So what if I have 2 different databases, they're both Netezza boxes or SQL servers, I can still connect to them through Tableau. And it doesn't matter how large they are, because Tableau can help you with that. Collaboration. This is, I have my coworkers here, I mentioned before, my boss, Michael, but then next to him is Alex, who is actually a UW-Madison alumni here, so he's back home. But Alex and I, we do this quite frequently. We always collaborate on our visualizations. We want to know that it's going to make sense to our end users, to the salespeople. Is this something that is consumable by someone? Does this make sense? Or even the question you never really asked of your data before, is it pretty? So, I mean, how many times have you asked, is my data pretty before? But now, when you use Tableau, you ask that quite frequently. Does this look nice? You know? It's not an outfit anymore, but it's something you want it to be visually appealing to a person. And now you can collaborate with your coworkers on that. Or you can change filters if it doesn't make sense. Maybe they don't like that line graph. Let's change it to a bar graph instead. Now you can collaborate with your BI solution. This is that flexible configurations that I talked about before, that it's not one size fits all. You have so many. Tableau has over 20,000 customers right now globally. And I mentioned Facebook, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. You have so many different industries and so many different customers who are using Tableau right now. And right here in your own Madison metropolitan area, you have dozens of customers who are using it, not just here on UW-Madison, but American Family Insurance is using it. You have WPS, ones that you know and probably know people who work there. And it's not going to be the same solution for all of them. But Tableau is unique enough where you can actually create a solution with this for everyone. Now, why we're all here today? How does Tableau work in higher education? And I'm actually going to make this presentation available to Kathy to send out to everyone in here, because every single one of the things that I'm going to show you on the future slides have, the majority of them have links for you. And every one of them involves a college or university that's here in the US, or there's actually Oxford is in here as well. And when there's something available visually, I have a link to that. So for those of you who want to use this as a document to look back on, I want to make sure you have that because I feel like that's important to you. 8 ways universities are making an impact with data. I've worked with a few of you. I've worked with Mary Kirk in the past. And Mary, do you mind if I point you out? Do you mind talking for a second? All right. We have a microphone around here. Thank you, Mary. Mary, I would love it if you talked about what kind of reporting you did and how you used Tableau.
Well, the type of reporting that I do is primarily in the administrative area. My primary expertise in data is HR, payroll, time and labor, absence management, that type of thing. And I dabble in student data, I like to say. And most of the time, what I am doing is operational types of reports. So people need to see the data itself. But recently, we had requests for a visualization of this data rather than just the rows of data. People wanted to see a visualization. So thanks to Sarah, who came and helped my colleague Bill Olson and I out, we were able to create a few proof of concept is what I like to call it, because they're not published anywhere. We just have the desktop installation. So, so I created Tableau proof of concept for diversity, showing the diversity in gender, age, and ethnicity of our employees across the system. And Bill was also looking at creating visualization of student data as well in the same area.
Enrollment data? Or?
This was enrollment data,
Okay, that's
yes.
what I thought.
Specifically in one college.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mary. I
Sure.
appreciate that. I know there's a couple more of you out there who use Tableau. I'm looking right next to Jean there. I can't remember. Hi. I can't remember your name. I'm terribly sorry. Claire. That's it. All right. I knew there was a C in there. That's what I was remembering. Do you mind talking about what you're doing with Tableau today?
Let's see. Well, there's two of us here. Sarah.
Claire, I'm going to bring you the microphone.
So we have, in the past, tried to show just on a map that I hand made where students who are applying for admission and Hello. Where students who are applying for admission are coming from, high school-wise, and you can imagine if you see a listing of like Adams High School, Abbotsford High School, Ashland High School, you get this big list, and if you don't know where those places are, it doesn't really add a lot of information. So it was really easy using Tableau to join it to a map, and you can put a dot on the map. I mean, we could look at it if you want, but you can visualize it a lot better and go, oh, I didn't know that's where, Black Creek High School is or whatever, those little places in Wisconsin. So that was one, and then did a similar thing for alumni data. A lot of interest in the part of legislators and things like that about where alumni live in the United States and the world and in Wisconsin, and especially related to where they came from before. So see in the paper, like, do Wisconsin residents stay in Wisconsin after graduation kind of question.
Alex did. He stayed in Wisconsin.
Yes. Most Wisconsin residents do, contrary to public sentiment. Do you want Sarah to talk about her?
Yeah, I want those of you who use Tableau specifically here, I would love to have you talk about so other people can hear what you're doing today.
All right, so I've created a version of an undergraduate program profile mainly for use by some of our departments and programs to go in and they can see their enrollment in the most recent fall term, and they can also see trend enrollment over time, their number of degrees. You can sort by major to see what are the biggest majors, the smallest majors, and then there's also a component of that that has time to degree data. So how long does it take students to complete your major? How does that compare to other majors on campus, and then also to our peers at other major research universities? The idea is that then programs can go in for things like program review, get their data easily, and be able to see it without having to use 4 or 5 other reports that we would have put out previously.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wanted to volunteer any information while we're at it? All right.
I'm going to volunteer one.
Thank you.
We're using Tableau, and Mary's doing it to look at usage of documents in the interactive reporting workspace to get a sense of how many actively used documents we're going to have to worry about transitioning to something else, and how many documents are there that are not being used. And so that's really helpful for planning.
So you're using it to track those documents, okay.
Or just to understand the usage of the content in the workspace.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a lot of the use cases that you guys have here on campus are actually what a lot of other schools are using it for as well. How many students are graduating? What does the student population look like? Especially if you're here in Madison, you guys have a lot more of a diverse campus than where I went to college. I went to college in New Ulm, Minnesota. Anyone ever heard of New Ulm, Minnesota? Wow, seriously? I am impressed. Now, let me see who has heard of Herman the German then. Nobody. All right. Just want to check. Oh, yes, one person. All right. So my college was very much not nearly as diverse of a campus as UW-Madison would be. And that can show in how your population looks. How are you managing your finances? What does your fiscal responsibility look like? And here are the 8 ways the majority of how campuses today are using Tableau. Some of what we already talked about in the room. Tracking enrollment trends. You're creating an interactive university fact book, not Facebook, though it uses Facebook, but fact book. How to attract prospective donors to your college. What about surveys that you put out there to your students or even to your peers or professors? Analyze space usage. And I was actually really fascinated with the space usage. And that's actually something we're going to look at building a little later. How can you do that? And Kathy actually sent me a map of the campus, and I wish I would have known what the different buildings were within the campus, because I would have loved to use a specific map to UW-Madison to kind of show you how that can be used. But then benchmarking against peer institutions, we heard that from Sarah just a few seconds ago. Also, the fiscal responsibility, and how do you improve communication as well. These are all current uses through Tableau today. And I have the actual colleges and universities that are using this. And this is why I want to send this to you, because each of these is a visualization for these specific use cases. At DePaul University, they are sharing their enrollment data. And they are actually sharing this through Tableau Public today, so anyone on Tableau Public can actually go on there and look at what their data is by the type of student. The colors that you have up here, they actually have, if you can kind of see, where's my laser pointer on here? There it is. Can you guys see that up there? Up there, they have drop-down boxes that allow them to change what their axis is and what they're looking at. So they can actually create something that allows them different insight, and this will change color based off of what their new metric is. Now here's one, Oxford University. This is the one that I talked about being outside of the US here. It's the same for them. They're sharing their enrollment data online, and they're putting it out on Tableau Public. The view shows postgraduate studies have been rising, while the undergraduate studies have been relatively flat. So they're creating that visual discovery that they didn't have before, just by, instead of looking at numbers, looking at a spreadsheet, looking at just regular information that we're all used to over the years, they're creating that visual discovery for themselves. Cornell University. Fact book. I had actually never heard of a fact book, really, as far as universities go, before I started researching this. And from what I could find, it's kind of like a university Facebook, gives you profiles and information on them. And that's what Cornell is doing with their information. They're putting it out there so you can actually look at the profiles of the specific class, of your faculty, different things like that. And then you have Brown University is also showing prospective students different things about their faculty. Wouldn't you like to know that? When I went to college, I really had nothing that I could find out about my professors, because I didn't even know who my professors were really going to be. And that kind of dates me a little bit as far as how long ago I went to college. We're not going to tell you how long ago I went to college. Or how to attract a prospective donor. Texas A&M. These are all universities or colleges that we've heard about, or I hear about because my husband always does the, what's the NCAA thing, the basketball? I'm not a sports person, can you tell? But I always hear about these colleges through him, and when he's picking them, and he asks me who should I pick, and it's like, oh, wow, I've heard of these before. But Texas A&M, they are trying to pinpoint exactly how they can find potential donors. Last year at the conference, it was in Washington, D.C., and one of my favorite sessions that I went to was Yale University talking about how they were looking for prospective donors. And they were doing it through predictive analytics. They were creating their own model to say, based off of these specific criteria, here's who we think will donate the most. And then they were visualizing that in Tableau. And since I was very heavily involved in predictive analytics at the time, I was really fascinated that someone was doing that with Tableau. Being an analyst, I wasn't yet a trainer for Tableau. I was amazed that something could be that easy. And to see someone like Yale, Ivy League, is using something that I use on a daily basis, I just felt like, wow, I'm part of a greater community than what I think I am. And that's exactly what they're doing as well. And Berkeley is doing the same thing. Survey results. You can do this with Tableau too. And we have Cornell University again. They keep popping up. One of my friends that I met at the conference last year, he went to Cornell University. So it's kind of funny how people go from, he was at Cornell, who uses Tableau, then he went to another company that used Tableau, and now he went to Facebook, who uses Tableau. So it's like I hear about these names and I see them, and it kind of brings it all together for me because it creates that network of people who use Tableau. Just kind of like that Tableau user group that I'm talking about, where you can talk to people from all these different industries. It's kind of the same thing out there wide. He was my friend at the conference last year, but now I can talk to him about what they're doing with Tableau at Facebook. Things I never thought were possible before. But survey results are very popular to show. And then you have also Utah State University is doing this as well. This is the one I really want to show you because this is going to go back to some of the examples that we're building out later. Space usage. They have a map of their campus, and then they can actually show what the space is being used for and why it's being used for what it is. I don't want to get into this one too much because we're going to actually be building stuff around something very similar to this a little bit. And Sarah also had mentioned benchmarking against your peers. And it looks like the iPads, is that how you would call it? Are you guys familiar with that at all? Okay. So wealth of benchmarking data, is that what you use to benchmark your, no? Interesting. All right. So, but that is what DePaul is using for their benchmarking. They're connecting to that and getting this data that's available to them and showing how they're performing in comparison. And you could probably do that. Think about geography. Think about size, or even what's your most popular subject, even something like that. Once again, these are all available for you to view out on Tableau Public. Some of these are not, though, but if you see this on the bottom, click here to view on Tableau Public, it is available. Fiscal responsibility. That is not just something that you see in universities today, but organizations as well, privately held or even publicly held. Everyone needs to be fiscally responsible. This is not unique to just the university itself, but they have to do it just the same as everyone else today. I have to be fiscally responsible, and I actually chart my finances out every month to see how I'm spending my money and how much money I have left. So yeah, I'm one of those people who actually does something like this. Improving your communication. You don't have to show just visualizations. You can actually show what your challenge is and your solution. You can add text to it if you wanted to. Or even address the different things that are being done. In the case up there, it says, can you guys read that at all? Okay. Many institutions face the problem of too much data coming from too many data sources. Enrollment systems, graduation databases, learning management, survey data, course information. And this is how the Utah State University approach that. They use a technology stack, including both Tableau desktop and server, blending on those various sources to give them the capabilities to view the information and summaries by departments. This is that disparate data sources again, where you don't need to have it sitting in the exact same database. They're utilizing that feature in Tableau today. So they say, here is what our problem is today, and here's how Tableau is helping us to solve it. All right, any questions on any of those use cases at all? Any comments? All right, well, I am going to show you guys a fun video. All right, who is familiar with this video? Who has seen this? All right, some of you haven't. So those of you who have seen it, don't spoil it. We're going to have you watch this, and this is going to play on what we notice. All right, so count how many times the players wearing white are passing the ball. Who got that? All right. How many of you had seen this video before? Who got that? Thank you, Claire. All right. Who spotted the gorilla? Not everyone spotted the gorilla, did they? Nope. Yep. I missed the gorilla the first time I saw this video, actually. Who noticed the curtain changing color? Ah, yep. Let's rewind. See it again. Now let's see how many people notice it. Who noticed the person in black leaving? Did anyone catch that? Okay. I love this example because I feel like when you're looking, this is so true, when you're looking for something specific, you miss what else is going on around you. And you might miss key insight to what is going on specifically in data today. So we're going to actually be going over human perception and cognition. And I really like this part of the session because I feel like the things we're going to be discussing are exactly what makes a difference in data and what makes a difference to the people who are consuming data, and how you can make it easy for people to actually interact with your data. Who is familiar with Anscombe's quartet? That is more people than I thought would be. Excellent. I thought it was musical at first when I first heard of Anscombe's quartet. But what it is that here you have 4 nearly identical visualizations who have identical statistical properties. So you see that the trend line on each of these is pretty much the exact same trend line. So if you were looking at just that, you would think this data is the exact same. Everything is trending up. But when you actually start to look at it visually, you notice that it's not the same. Sure, statistically, they're nearly identical, but visually, they are very different from each other. You have data spread very differently from one quadrant to the next. So while your data may say, all right, I'm trending up, which don't you want to know exactly how it's performing? All right, we're going to do, I'm sorry, it's the afternoon. I'm making you do math. But let's give you 30 seconds to see if you can solve for this. Whoever gets it, just shout it out. I want to hear. $22.18, I heard that. What else? $26.58. Any other? Those are the only 2? All right. It was actually 2,448. I would love to say that I am very skilled at doing math in my head, but I would be very lying to you a lot. So I actually require paper and pencil. I still like doing it the old-fashioned way. I like writing it out. I don't like using my calculator. I actually want to write it out to see it. So on average, a person, when doing math mentally, takes about 50 seconds to solve for that. When you're using paper and pencil, it takes you about 10 seconds. When you can actually see it, write it down, interact with it. Imagine that you didn't see the red on here. This was just like that opening sequence of numbers that we looked at. Can you tell me who's the most profitable if you took away the red? It'd be really hard to tell who the most profitable is based off of this. But if you add in the color, now I actually am drawn to where that color is. I can actually start to see where things are happening and where I need to look in my data itself. So color helps me, but a few other things that are going to help me. When I start to see something else, like a bar, size of a bar, color of a bar, how long is that bar? Now, not only do I have color to guide me, but I have those things to guide me as well. I can actually see who maybe my most profitable are instead. Before, I knew who wasn't profitable. But if I want to know who the most profitable is, I needed to add something else to that visualization. Pre-attentive visual attributes. These are what people naturally relate to when they're looking at visualizations. So if you want someone to actually know what's going on in your view, in your analytics, in anything, as far as like a chart, bar graph, line, you want to think about length. You want to think about how wide is that bar, or what's the orientation of it, because I can see that that one on the third one in is kind of wonky. It's not quite right. I'm drawn right to it. Or size. Also with shape, I can notice that a shape is different. I actually do not like this example of shape because I feel like color would actually help me to see that shape a little better. Or the curvature, and then enclosure, and then color, hue, and intensity. Here's what we consider to be the most important when looking at data. It doesn't mean that the ones at the bottom of our funnel are any less important, but position, where is it located? When we looked at that Anscombe's quartet, the first thing we notice is where that data is, the position of that data. And we could see just off of looking at it that those 4 different quadrants were very different from each other and where those positions of those circles were. Same with the color. And what about size and also shape? How we like our data. When we're looking at time, we like it on an x-axis. We like to look at it linearly. Location. If we talked about where campus or high school locations were before. Claire brought that up. Where a specific high school was. If I want to know where that high school is, just looking at a list of high schools is not going to help me. If you put it on a map, suddenly I can relate to it. Hey, maybe I went canoeing there one summer or something. When people relate to your data, they want to interact with your data. The same with comparing values, just like that one that we just showed you before. When I'm comparing my values, suddenly I have a lot better idea of what's going on in my data itself. Or exploring relationships between 2 different values when I'm looking at a scatter plot itself. Which, by the way, I'm a total dork when it comes to certain charts, and I have favorites, and scatter plot happens to be one of my favorites. Do you guys actually think about, do I have a favorite chart? I'm kind of curious if anyone else does that. All right. Scatter plots are my favorites, and I also have a fondness for histograms, maybe. Yeah, I do. All right. Relative proportions. The tree map. Tableau's answer to the pie chart. Here's another little quiz for you. The 4 squares here. Who thinks those are the same color? Who doesn't think they're the same color? Let's find out. The moment we provide a consistent background or outline a shape, we see better. And this is actually when I teach my classes, when I go out and go to different clients and teach Tableau. Even before we talk about some of the other best practices as far as Tableau is concerned, I teach them about how to create enclosure for your background, how to provide that consistent background so you can actually see what is happening much better. Because if you build those into what you're doing right away, they're going to do it every time. And this is exactly why I teach them to do that. The way that we can distinguish colors, humans, we can only distinguish 8 colors. Over here, we are using a palette of, I believe it's 16 colors, no, way more than that. This would be the Tableau 20 at least that you can use, color palette. So how can we make sense of that? It looks like a bunch of Skittles to me that fell on the ground. I'm not going to make any relationship between these 2 different values because now I'm thinking about candy and sugar. But when I take that and apply, instead of numerous or dozens of colors, and I apply just specific ones, 8, I can actually start to see things emerging in my data that haven't before. And this is, if we go to the previous slide, when you provide that outline, that consistent background, that's actually one thing I always talk about with scatter plots. Because if I added an outline to these circles instead, that story would become even more visually appealing and also would make more sense. When we're talking about quantitative data, color intensity and diverging color palettes. Now, I have the bar graph that is showing me by the length of the bars what's going on, but now I can add a color to those bars. And I can see what is profitable and what isn't. And you may notice, you can't read that probably, but it's tables. And anytime you take a Tableau class through Tableau, or if you ever visit them, Kathy, did you guys actually go to Tableau's headquarters when you were out there at all? At Tableau headquarters, they actually have a band on premises that they call Tables in the East, because the data set that you use when teaching Tableau classes, whenever you are asked what's the least profitable, you can automatically assume if you say tables in the East, that is going to be it. So it comes up a lot in classes, so they actually have an inside joke at Tableau about that. And this is actually tables in the East up here. Tables is always unprofitable in those data sets. So if anyone's going to the conference and you see a shirt that says tables in the East, you might assume that they are part of the band at Tableau of tables in the East. Mapping. Only when location is relevant. And I want to show you an example of when not to use a map. I talked about my favorite chart before, scatter plot. And first I want to actually show this to you on a map. And I want you to tell me when something historically significant happens. Don't shout it out, just keep it in mind. It's kind of like watching ice melt a little bit, isn't it? I promise it gets way more exciting. All right. Did anyone see anything that popped out at them at all? All right. Now I'm going to show you this exact same data in a different format. In my favorite chart, the scatter plot. Now I want everyone to tell me when something happens. This is the same data. Your reaction alone says you saw something. Yep. So everyone you all reacted when you saw something happen, right? That bounce. What do you think the cause of that was? I'm sorry? Influenza. Did it, Yes. There you go. Right around World War I is when it happened. So, but just because you can use maps doesn't mean you should. And where you could actually see the population in Asia did grow significantly in that first one when you put it on a map, you didn't see that bounce, did you? You didn't see that something historically, that all of us learned about in school impacted the population. Because this is talking about life expectancy versus income per person. Something happened. Life expectancy went way down. Income went way down. Something happened globally because you could see that that was affected in your data. So use maps when the location is actually relevant. I was showing motion in my data because I actually wanted to see how my data moved throughout the years. Doesn't necessarily mean I wanted to see where it was on a map itself, but sometimes I do. And this was an example they used at the conference last year because we actually had the conference in DC, so there's no better way to scare the people who are attending your conference than letting them know where they could potentially have their purse stolen. So pretty much stay at your hotel was what I took from that. But it was relevant because I could actually see that there was quite a bit that happened within a specific part of the city that maybe I don't want to go there without somebody. If I only have one measure, that's when I want to use filled maps. If I have multiple measures, then I can start using some of those attributes that we talked about. I can use size now, because I can take a circle and size it based off of a specific measure. I can add color. So now I can bring people into my visualization and show them where things are happening. So I can actually look over on the East Coast, and here I have this big green circle. And I know that just by being a big green circle, that I'm profitable and I have high sales. But then if I go down to the Gulf Coast, I have small circles that are red. And I can say I don't have a lot of sales and I'm unprofitable. It gives me points to look at, data to drill into that I may not have had before. One of the other things I like to teach when we're creating visualizations, the 5-second rule. If you don't know what's going on with your dashboard or visualization in 5 seconds, you need to rebuild it. And this is where that collaborative team approach comes in again. I can take advantage of Alex and say, Alex, does this make sense to you? Do you know exactly what I'm trying to get at? And that's exactly what I did yesterday. I was showing him the example I'm going to show you later on for building the space utilization. And I asked him, I'm like, Alex, do you feel like this is going to be impactful? Does it make sense to the audience? Does it make sense to you? And that's where you can actually use this 5-second rule. And I also like to use my real estate as best as I possibly can, and Tableau lets me do that through floating objects as well with legends, so you can put them near the visualization that they match up with. The other thing is I like to keep it 4 or fewer on my dashboard, and it's usually in a Z formation. So I'm going to start at the upper left, move to the upper right, down to the lower left, and over to the lower right. That way I have my most important view right up in the front. So in this case, I know that a map is going to be the most important visualization that I can show someone. I want to put that where they are intuitively going to be drawn to it and know that this is the most important thing they can look at. And I'm also going to create interactivity on this dashboard as well, where they can actually start to draw their own insight. They can click on the filters. They can click on the map. They can start to view things on their own. One of the things when I did go to school to teach, especially first and second graders, one of the things you tell them a lot is use your words. So now that I'm an adult and teaching Tableau, I find it kind of humorous that it's kind of come full circle back to that I'm telling people use your words again. But I do. You want to make things obvious to people, and you want to communicate that to them. And you communicate this through your titles, your axes, through something called a tooltip. A tooltip is where I can hover over any of those points or marks on my chart, and I can actually gain insight based off of what that is specifically. I can see what the number is. So if we're looking at profit or sales, I can see exactly what that number is for that given mark. And here's things I want you to kind of think about, and it goes back to that storytelling, that you are, with data, the modern storyteller. You are that person traveling around through your visualizations. Think of the audiences that you're going to reach. And if you think of it from a story standpoint, who remembers from composition class back in high school where you actually had to write stories and you had to think of the different parts of a story? That's kind of like this again. You have to start thinking about it that way. How is this going to make sense? And I feel like one of the best examples is actually in Tableau 8.2, they have something called story points, where you can actually lead that person along the story you want them to read. So think of the flow of this. And has anyone heard of Kiva at all? Well, Kiva is a nonprofit organization, and this is a story point. So each of those boxes at the top is a different part of the story, a different page to their story. So they're going to start with the highest level of their story, and they're going to lead them through that. And your story will flow, and to me, that's how you can help your story flow. Think of those visual things that we've kind of talked about as well. How you can think of size and color, outlines, make it easy for your audience, and then just like we've kind of tried to do today, invite your audience to participate. Be direct with your audience. All right, and this takes us to our next part of our session today, and we actually have a break that is going to be built in, and that would be right now. So I will give it back to Kathy.
You want to turn the lights on?
Yeah.
So we have, 15-minute break or? Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's be back at 22, and I assume there's more goodies and refreshments in the back. We don't want any leftovers, so please partake.
Yeah, that thing with the dots moving is from a really good little 5-minute video I've seen. It might be a TED Talk.
Is it?
It's really good. It's really dynamic.
So that was just a piece of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are a whole bunch of them. I never really realized it was Tableau that he was using to grab the data. So it's good. It's really good. There are a whole bunch of them.
I'll have to look for that. So any comments on the?
I think things are working. No comments. I've been checking.
I got a voice message, so I will go listen to it.
It will. For 2 weeks, it'll be hosted on the server that is being recorded on, and then we'll move it somewhere.
I'm listed on here.
Okay.
Are you going to send it out to the people, or
There hadn't been a plan to, but I'll give the links to Kathy and
see if you can get it out there? Because I'm going to want to watch it. Just to, because you know, I don't know if you know stuff. So I'll just send you anything early. All these tips I like to get.
Okay.
So, yeah, you can do that.
yeah, I'll give the information to Kathy and she can share it. Oh, excellent. Two things. Are you familiar with a TED Talk by Hans Rosling?
That was him.
I thought so. I thought that was really familiar. That's a great TED Talk, and he's got that other short one. Also, I've had a number of people come and ask, after we're recording this, is it okay? It's going to be on our Tech People server for 2 weeks. But then is it okay if we throw it on our YouTube channel?
Of course.
Is that all right with you?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I'll just give that URL to Kathy so that
My
they
YouTube
can share.
presence.
Right, there you
My
go.
second one ever.
Yeah, OQI has a YouTube channel, and it'll just be a place that can live for
Okay.
a while, so people won't be limited to the 2 week
yeah,
window
that'd be fantastic.
that are IT people's.
No, I want to make sure that people have accessibility
good.
for sure.
Well, it's what you do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're selling Tableau.
This is no. Usually I'm just building stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and training people on it.
That's
so,
cool.
yeah, usually
Yeah.
I teach.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. Well, you're very dynamic. It's
Oh,
good.
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hi. Of course.
So you said that.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
The way that it works is.
Again?
4 minutes.
4
You got to
minutes.
see this. The guy is Hans Rosling, and I asked her, and that
Good.
the guy is Hans Rosling, and I asked her about that little graph, and she said, "Yeah, it's from his presentation." Here's just a quick clip. You can't hear the sound, but this is cool.
I've seen
Have
things
you seen
kind
this?
of, not this one.
This is fascinating.
I've seen things similar, not very many, but it is.
This is and she did say they used Tableau to make this. I want him to get started. I want to see if we get to start.
So this is the data we saw.
Yeah. I don't want to take all your time. I
No,
want to
that's
see it get
okay.
started. There we go. Now it's moving. It's a really dynamic the way he does this,
It's really a cool use of that tool.
isn't it?
So that's really
Here's
telling the
World War
story.
II. Yeah, and he's slowing it down, doing the World War II so you can see the bounce. Isn't that
So
fascinating?
who is this? This is
It was
some
Hans Rosling.
history.
I sent you a link to this.
Yeah, I saw
and he
that.
did a TED Talk. Oh, you saw it already?
No, I saw that you sent me the link.
Yeah.
I didn't look at it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I listened to my voice messages. IBM trying to sell us a PI. I'm going to be
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that.
Anyway, this is
That's
it's
cool.
worth watching. It's
Now,
really
I don't think it was this one. Maybe it was this one. But it was a while back. I don't
cool.
remember. It is very cool. Very cool.
and the fact that he's in the background talking
Yes.
about it. And
So you get the story along with the visual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also
And-
underlines how you can really manipulate data to get it to tell the story that you want it to tell. I think that's a really interesting thing. It can
It
be really
is.
powerful that way.
It is.
You can manipulate it. It's still accurate. But
I'm sure that goes on all the time.
sure. Yes.
Think of all the television advertising. that you
Exactly.
see.
Exactly.
Okay. How you doing?
Good.
Good.
Water is helpful.
Yeah.
Going well so far?
Yes. No, yeah, I think that was very good.
You have a lot of people interested in it.
Yes, yes. Yeah. No, I think there is. And there are only a few that didn't pick up name tags, so.
That's good.
So I'm glad we moved here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're coming together on working towards server purchasing.
Yeah.
Slow but sure.
Well, a lot of people, the questions that they've been asking me are like, should I do the lights?
Yeah, that would. Yeah, you.
All right. Did everyone have a nice break? Were there brownies out there again? That's just evil. One, you just had lunch before you came here, and now they're feeding you sugar, and now I'm tasked with keeping you guys awake for the rest of the afternoon. So I want to, this afternoon, for the second portion, I wanted to kind of talk about the different parts of Tableau. And the scatter plot that I showed you before is actually by someone by the name of Hans Rosling. Who has heard of Hans Rosling? All right. Hans Rosling is most famous for his TED Talks, and this is actually one of his famous TED Talks. So even if you haven't heard of Hans Rosling, I'm assuming the majority of you have probably heard about TED Talks before, right? Show of hands on that one? Yep, exactly. TED Talks are very popular today. For anyone who's in the public speaking or has a fear of public speaking, like I did a year ago, it kind of really helps you to see how people are presenting different data. And in this case, it was the life expectancy and income per person. The reason why I also like showing this, and I actually started showing this even before this happened, but the conference that I keep bringing up for Tableau, this literally is 4 days of learning as much as you possibly can. There are 240 unique sessions that Tableau presents during that period of time. And it's different sessions on Tableau, yes, but it's also on things that are relevant to BI today. So you're hearing from some of the industry's best minds about what is going on and also different skills that you can learn. Like I mentioned Yale before. I never would have had a chance to see Yale had I not gone to this conference. But you have companies like Redbox, PlayStation, people that you get to watch and see how they're handling analytics and BI today. But Hans Rosling is one of the keynote speakers this year at the conference. So I'm really excited to see him. But the one that my team is the most excited to see is this gentleman on the left, or your right. So we're super excited because he is definitely in the whole social media, very well known, and every geek's best friend that they like to think or talk about, like, hey, he's really cool. But anyone like Big Bang Theory at all? Yeah, so he makes a few cameo appearances on there as well. The conference is actually happening in Seattle in September, and here's a couple of the other speakers who will be there. I really like Tableau too, not just because of the product itself, but I feel like I can relate to it because there's a lot of different ties back to Wisconsin, and specifically my little home, oops, forget the microphone's right there, but my different home of Milwaukee, because the CEO, Christian Chabot, is actually from Mequon, Wisconsin. So he's a local guy. And here he is out there creating one of the biggest changes to the BI market as far as products go. So I would like to think that I could just go up and shake his hand and have a beer with him, and I probably could because he's actually a super nice guy. And also, who's familiar with Moneyball? The movie? I always like bringing Moneyball up because I feel like to anyone who I had someone ask about algorithms during the break. Anyone who's familiar with algorithms and also likes sports, it kind of is the convergence of all those different things in the movie Moneyball. You have algorithms and statistics to predict how a player is going to perform in baseball, and you have Brad Pitt. So, really, it's the perfect movie. But I was really excited about that because the Brewers recently, out on their website earlier this year, posted a bunch of positions pretty much doing what Moneyball did. So I was trying to get as many friends as mine as possible who have a background in statistics to apply for those jobs on the Brewers website, mostly because I wanted free tickets to the Brewer games more than anything. But here you have a bunch of people who, in one way or another, have had a significant impact data-wise or that you know about. They also have different speakers from the different customers. Like I was the customer speaker last year, one of them. So here are some of the customers who are going to be there as well. So quite a few names that some of you are familiar with. Like Carnegie Mellon is going to be there. But I'm also a big food person, so I'm quite excited to see the All Recipes presentation. Coca-Cola, Cornell will also be there. And Deloitte, I am kind of excited to see theirs as well because Deloitte actually has a unique configuration as far as Tableau goes. They have given Tableau to every single person that they employ. So it is like how Excel is to most companies today or industries. Instead of just having Excel on their desktop, every single person now has Tableau. And that's kind of where that ubiquitous collaboration comes in. When you start allowing people to access something like Tableau on a daily basis, give them a tool to start doing those visual discoveries, Deloitte's the perfect example of what that is. So these are just some of the top names today, and Texas Rangers, there is a definite baseball theme going on this year. I'm quite excited. And Seattle Mariners, I wonder if there will be September, there are going to be baseball games out in Seattle, but that should be exciting. I also want to show you Tableau Public. And a lot of the links that I showed you before in the PowerPoint to the different universities and the visualizations that they're building, they're out on Tableau Public. And Tableau Public isn't just a place where universities can put their data or their visualizations. It's for people who want to use social media as well. Tableau Public is actually a free service that you can use, but it's not a secure service. So any data that you post out there actually is going to be accessible to people who view your visualizations. But from a social media standpoint, what if you want to show some interesting things? Like up here, you have something called Viz of the Day, and you have people who are playing with data for fun. That's a new concept that just 5 years ago, who would have played with data for fun? Anyone in this room? All right, some of you. All right. But I think if you actually went to something like the Tableau conference, or even if you went to AE today, a lot of us would raise our hands on that. We love playing with data, and it has a lot to do with Tableau, because we can actually make some pretty interesting insights. Or even, I have a Tableau public visualization out there called Your Geek is Showing, and it's pretty much using some of the different parameters you can build, and then calculations behind the scenes, creating a value for each of these drop downs that you select, and it's going to give you a score of how geeky you are. So that's how I use Tableau today. But you have people doing very similar things to that. Like you have the San Diego Comic-Con up there, Accidents in France, where students in the US were enrolled in 2012. I did not plan that, by the way. Let's click on that one. So this is actually California Community Colleges to the nation. So he's comparing the enrollment, it looks like. I have not looked at this before, so this is a story point. Higher ed data stories. So he's going through the different information on here. All right. So those are just a few of the examples, though, of what's out there. You think of the topic, someone has put it out on Tableau Public. And what I like to use Tableau Public for, I like to look at it for creative inspiration, because we talked about how Tableau is actually storytelling now. You are the modern storyteller. But sometimes you kind of hit that wall and you have that creative block that maybe I'm not sure how to show something differently than the ways that I've shown it before. And whenever I need inspiration or I want to look at what other people are doing, I look to Tableau Public. And Tableau Public always helps me kind of get over that. And we're talking about thousands of visualizations out there too. So I think of this as a great resource for creative inspiration, but this should also give you an idea of how people are approaching Tableau today. And this is another part that I like to talk about as far as Tableau goes. We have the TUGs, or Tableau user groups in the area, but Tableau, not just about being a software, but it's also a community of people. And I haven't really found that with other services. I don't have Excel user groups. I don't have Cognos user groups that I go to, or people who are super excited about the tool that they're using today, that they do something like this. And you have, aside from Tableau Public, if you go back to Tableau's actual website, they have something called the Tableau Forums, and you post your questions out there. And you have a bunch of subject matter experts from every walk of life who are willing to help answer your questions for you. And they're going to show you how to write your different calculations that you need to do. This gentleman over here, I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, but he asked me a question during the break about how could he show future dates in his data if it's not there. Can he create an algorithm or a calculation to account for that? And yes, you can do that in Tableau. But what if I don't know how to do that? Tableau software on the forums, these people are going to help you to do that. You don't necessarily need to know how to do it because people have done it before you. And that's kind of how I build some of my stuff too. Like I wanted to create a visualization showing distance between two different points on a map. And had I paid attention to trigonometry in high school, perhaps I would have been able to do it. But Tableau Forums is exactly where I was able to get some of that knowledge. So if I go back to actual Tableau, support. It's all under support. And you can find the community. I talk about it as a community because it's a huge community. You have forums, you have groups, people who have built groups around specific industries. I believe there's a higher education group that is out there. Since I'm a Tableau trainer, I belong to Tableau trainer groups as far as best practices, how to teach people. So if there's something you can think of, it's out there. And there's going to be the support around it too. Then there's also things like our blog. We're not the only blog out there. Though of course I'm going to say it's the best, right? But it's not. We're not there yet. but we want to get there. But it's going to help you too. When you do a search on Google, and my friend Kevin, who actually works at Northwestern Mutual in Milwaukee, he uses Tableau all the time. And he did this one presentation on Tableau as well. And he had this slide that I keep meaning to steal from him, but I just haven't yet because I haven't asked him for it. So it's really not stealing if I'm asking though, right? But he has a slide where he talks about when he was looking at the different visualization solutions for BI. He looked at Spotfire, ClickView, and also Tableau. And he wanted to know what kind of user community existed around this. And when he looked at ClickView and Spotfire, there were under 50,000 hits out on Google as far as the community. But then when he actually went and looked up Tableau, he had over 500,000 hits on Google. That should tell you how wide this community is, and that you have people all over the world who are supporting it. So this is our blog, Tableauza. So you can go out there. We just started it though, so it's not nearly as robust as we want it to be. But if you stay tuned, we should have some interesting things out there. All right. So I wanted to build something with you today, because I think I can talk about Tableau, and there are some of you out here who have used Tableau, but unless you actually see how Tableau works, you're not really going to see the power of how easy it is to adapt to and what it can actually do for you in an environment today as far as BI or analytics goes, or even reporting overall, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're creating a report. All right, so this is when you go into Tableau and you open it up. This is actually Tableau 8.2, which just came out a few weeks ago. Tableau comes out with a few releases every year. Usually it's 1 or 2 releases, but this year it actually, I believe, is going to be, no, it's 3. Because they did 8 in the first part of the year, then they came out with 8.1, and now they just came out with 8.2. This is more releases than they've ever done in a single year. And 8.2 is very different than the versions that have come before, at least when you're connecting to your data. Because they actually have something that's called a visual join now. Who does joins in their data today? Okay. So usually you have to write out the language to define how you're joining your data together. But now I don't have to do that at all. So let's just select where we're finding our data. And this is the screen that if you haven't opened up 8.2 yet and you've been working in 8.1, it's very different. But this is where it all starts. It starts with your data. And you need to define what your data is. And in this case, I'm connecting to Excel. But if I was connected to a server that had different tables on it as well, the way that the sheets appear over there is exactly how those tables would appear as well. And it tells you intuitively, if I wanted to connect to my data right now, if I wanted to look at a table or a sheet, what do you guys think I should do? Drag it. Exactly. Right there, the first step is intuitive. I drag it. And I start seeing my data, what it looks like. Now for joins, this is where it's way easier than in 8.1. If I want to join to another data set or a different table, I drag it over. And now I can actually say how I want to join my data and where I want to join my data on. So just wanted to show those of you who are familiar with 8.1 exactly what that looks like. All right, so I talked about the University of Purdue earlier and how they did a space usage analysis. And this is something unique that I think you can do in Tableau. You can do mapping in Tableau. What Tableau does is when you connect to your data, it's going to read the first few rows of your data and actually say this is what data type it is. It's going to say I'm a geographic value, I'm a string value, I'm a fact that I can do a measure aggregation on, and it's going to apply defaults to that based on that. So yes, I can do mapping. If I have cities in there, it's going to apply that. But what if I have campus information? What if I actually want to see how the different buildings on my campus are being used? If you have a picture of this, and Kathy sent me a picture of a map here, so I know that they do exist for your campus, I can actually load that into Tableau. Just like I would load a picture into email, that's how I would load it into Tableau. So let's go here. And this is what the UI looks like for Tableau. When I connect to my data, I'm going to see how the first few rows of my data were read into Tableau. So on the left, I have what is called the data window. And this is where my dimensions are, or my categorical data. And then I have my measures beneath that. And these are the things that I can do calculations on, or aggregations. And all of those are going to go into what I build in the view, which is where that map is. That is called a view. So right away you may see things that maybe you're familiar with from Excel. Like on the bottom here, you have the tabs, exactly like Excel. You edit them exactly like Excel too. You have your rows and you have your columns, just like Excel. So now, how do I load an image? Here, for maps, when I click on maps, it gives me a variety of options. If I'm working with background maps, I can see, do I want to use the ones that are classically loaded into Tableau, which you need an internet connection for. That way you can actually see data that is being fed into it, and that can give you background data, like census data as well. So I would require an internet connection. That's why it has an offline option for that too. Or, like in this case, I can actually load an image. And everyone here has loaded an image probably, especially in today's age, especially with iPhones and families living farther away from each other. My parents live in Minnesota, and they want to know what's happening with my dogs quite frequently. So I send them pictures of my dogs. So I send images by loading them or adding them, attaching them. And that's how I would do that here. I'm going to add an image. I'm going to browse for it exactly like how you would attach an image. And then, in this case, I've loaded an image. It's there. If I have my coordinates in my data, which you're not always going to necessarily have, but in this case, it's in my data, because that's where this all goes back to. What's in my data? Tableau is going to read exactly what my X field are and then what my Y field are. But if they don't, I can actually tell Tableau, here's what they should be, and based off of what field. So now, when I want to load that background image and start building with it, let's create a new worksheet. Let's select my background image. I'm going to hit OK. It's not going to show up yet because I haven't told my visualization where it should show up on yet. So that's where I'm going to start actually bringing in some of my measures, bringing in some of my dimensions. So I'm going to bring in my lat and my long. And I don't want it to be a sum, so I'm actually doing a right click with my mouse. And when I do a right click with my mouse in Tableau, it gives me a variety of options on aggregations for a specific measure. I don't want to apply any aggregation though, so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Something starts appearing, but it's not that image yet, is it? I need to apply my longitude now. And I'm going to do that same right click with my mouse. Once I told Tableau, here's where my longitude and latitude are, it recognizes, because I told it to, by using that background image, that these need to go on that map, that I'm trying to map something. And now this is where I can start applying when you know your data, you're going to know. So just looking at this, and I just started playing with this data set a few days ago. I went out onto Tableau's website to see what people are doing with higher education, and this is one that was out there. And so it took me a few minutes to figure out that area was actually square feet. So I want to look at my shape, or my mark, as Tableau calls it. These circles are called marks in Tableau. I want to look at the size of them as a circle first, and then I want to size them based off of my square footage. So I'm going to apply that as a size now. So based off of just doing those couple of clicks, I have a unique background image to my campus. I can tell just by size where the majority of the square footage is, and then now I can add more, because when I have circles, I can add size, but I can also add color. So let's look at use description. Let's see how these different shapes are being used. And now, I don't think circle is going to accomplish this story anymore. So I actually want to look at a pie chart instead to show me, based off of those individual locations, who is using the majority of those locations. So I'm going to select pie chart instead. And I'm also going to adjust my size because it's very hard to read. So now I have more complete information off of a map that was just an image sitting on my desktop not that long ago. And let's show you. Here's the one that I had actually built before. And this is where that best practice comes in again that I was talking about, especially when using shapes. One of the things I always tell people when you're first building something in Tableau, you need to apply an outline, because pie charts naturally are not going to be easy for people to understand. When they look at pie charts, they have a very hard time seeing what the angle is. But if you actually add something like an outline to it, they're going to be able to understand what's going on a lot better than they would otherwise. So that's how you can create a custom map in Tableau. I had mentioned that I actually got this data set off of Tableau's website, and this is what it looked like when I pulled it off of there. And to me, this did not have best practices applied to it. Kind of thinking from the perception and cognition standpoint, it's not the best use of real estate, as I like to call it in Tableau. When I have a dashboard, so I have 3 different sheets on here. This is a dashboard. Whenever you bring multiple sheets together into one view, that's called a dashboard. But to me, the map is the most important thing. And based off of best practices and how people are going to easily read your data, having it to the side, not that first view, is not best practices at all. Who here thinks it passes the 5-second rule? Nobody. Did you understand within 5 seconds exactly what this was trying to accomplish? You can say out loud, yes? Okay. So to me, this was kind of hard to understand, but also the space use by type. What's that mean exactly? And I also feel like the legends are not obvious. They're kind of hard to read. I don't understand which graph they actually go to, and then for the square feet, I can't see everything on there too. So I wanted to actually apply some of those best practices to this as well. I had mentioned tree maps before. And this way, instead of showing a line chart, I can get the same functionality, understanding who's taking up the majority of square footage by accomplishing that through a tree map. And a tree map is going to use a measure, and it's going to use a dimension, and it's going to apply color and size based off of those 2 things, just like a pie chart. So instead, I have something that is potentially a lot more consumable by an end user. But not only that, but I've created something else that I can include in my dashboard for interactivity. So let's go back to this dashboard that I've built. So let's look at the original again. So this is that space by use one, the original, what it looked like. And now I've replaced that with a tree map instead. Now when I've replaced that with a tree map, one way that I like to use tree maps is as a filter. Because I've actually included some of the same functionality. You know exactly what was going on with that bar graph before. But now, instead of having a filter on the original one where you could select a drop-down box, I've created one of my charts, one of my worksheets to be a filter instead. So I can actually click on this, and based off of that, I can look at my other two charts. I can look at my map, specific to office, and also by department, where the colleges are using the square footage the most. Also, do you remember the color legend at the bottom? I don't need that color legend anymore either, because I can actually use this worksheet to be a color legend. So I have actually taken 3 things that existed in my previous visualization. I have taken the actual bar chart, I have taken the filter, and I have taken the color legend, and now I've combined it all into one worksheet instead. And I have also included interactivity for the end user. Now let's look at the other chart that was on the original one, space by department. This one does make sense to me, but I don't feel like it gives me enough insight into what is truly going on. I have the space by department, and also I have the color applied for those spaces, and then I can see what the square footage is for each of those as well. But I want to, once again, create interactivity instead. So what I did instead, I built a hierarchy for that. So I took the college, which was the original field. Let's actually remove the hierarchy. So I have college, and then I have use type. I want people to be able to drill in based off of college into what a use type is. And in a lot of legacy BI tools, you would have to go back to a DBA to actually build hierarchies into your database itself. You don't have to do that in Tableau. You can actually say, here's what I want my hierarchy to be, and you can build it yourself. But all of these changes that you are doing in the UI right now, they don't write back to your database. These are all visualizations that are for you, the developer, and also for interactivity for the end user or the consumer. To build a hierarchy is literally as easy as dragging and dropping. I can take my use type and drop it on top of college, which I know I want to be the highest level of my hierarchy. And right away, Tableau recognizes that I want to build a hierarchy. So I'm going to call this college drill down. That's all it takes to build a hierarchy within there. Now, Tableau recognizes that I've built a hierarchy over here on the row shelf, because you see this little negative or subtraction or minus sign, whatever you want to call it. There's not a specific name for it, but it tells me I can collapse my hierarchy. And when I do that, that's exactly what it does. And it brings me back to what my original view was. But now I can actually gain further insight into what is going on space-wise, what is being used the most by each college as well. So I've actually created an additional layer of data and an additional layer of interactivity that did not exist before. So let's go back to that dashboard that we're trying to apply best practices on. And we have the traditional view, and we also have the extended view with the hierarchy. Let's look at, if I look at it by office, and now I can actually see that doesn't really do much for me. So I want to make an additional change. I'm going to do something called a parameter within Tableau. A parameter is going to create the opportunity for even more interactivity for your end user. It's not going to use a constant number for someone. So I have a constant value in my data, whether it be a dimension, whether it be a measure, but now I'm going to allow my end user to change that instead. And that's exactly where a parameter comes in then. And to create a parameter, you have a few different areas where you can do that. You can click on an actual dimension or a measure, or in any white space in your data window, and it gives you the option to create a parameter. I've already created this parameter, and this is what it looks like. I know that I want it to be based off of string values. I want my end user to be able to look at college. I want them to be able to look at use type, and I also want them to be able to look at the use description as well. I want this to be my end user who is driving, how they interact with this unique custom map that we're building for our campus. So I'm going to populate this list. I'm going to select list, and then I'm going to type in what I want my drop-down box to be for my end user. So I'm essentially, by creating a parameter, it's going to take me 5 seconds, and I just need to tell Tableau, here's my drop-down options, and what they're going to select from. Once it's done, I can name it. So we're going to call this college drill down options. And now, if I do a right click again, and when I teach classes for Tableau, I actually have 5 best practices that I share with my class, because I never actually took a formal Tableau class until I'd been working with the product for maybe about 3 years. And at that point, I realized that there's a lot that I don't know that I wish someone would have shared with me those first few years of learning Tableau. And that's kind of where I created my best practices from. And one of the best practices that I actually build into Tableau is, when in doubt, right click. Because in most cases, when you're building something in Tableau, if you do the right click, it's like, who plays video games here? All right. Who's familiar with button mashing when it comes to video games? All right, so I occasionally like to play my husband in video games, but I'm not very good at them. So I am what they call a button masher. And pretty much you hit the buttons as much as you possibly can and hope that something happens. And that's kind of the same thing as far as best practices with Tableau. You can right click, and you can right click on a dimension, a measure. You can right click over here. Something will help you through the right click. So that, to me, when in doubt, right click is one of my 5 best practices. And that's exactly how you show a parameter control too. You right click. And I'm already showing my parameter control, but when I right click on my parameter, that's exactly where it shows up. And now, over on the side of my visualization, you see my college drill down options. And that is what a parameter looks like right now. It looks like a filter built into your visualization. They actually don't look very different from each other, except when you click on the parameter, you don't get the other options that you would, like if you had a filter on there. But now, there's a couple other steps you would need to take. But I can select from my parameter what I want my tree map to be. So now I can look at what the use description is, but I can also look at what my college is and what my use type is. And all those things that I built into my tree map previously, so I combined that bar chart, I combined what my color legend was, and I also combined my filter. That's still all there, but I have additional functionality that I did not have before, and I've kind of put the control into the hands of my end user too. So let's go back to my build example now. And let's change my parameter to go by college instead. Anyone notice anything on here? There's something wrong with my data. Let's see if someone can catch it. I heard part of that. Can someone speak up? Exactly. Yes. So now that I've gone through, I've built my data out, but I've noticed there is something wrong with my data. Something is going on behind the scenes. And I want to go and look at why is my data doing this. So let's go back to data. And we're looking at college. Something is different with college. Now I want to look at the different members of college. So I'm going to do that best practice that I just talked about, right click. And when I right click, there's something called the default properties. And when I go to default properties, I can look at the aliases. I can look at the different members of that actual dimension. And now when I look at the members of my dimension, I can actually see that for my member engineering, it is showing that it's liberal arts. And my liberal arts, it's actually showing a value of engineering instead. So I need to swap those. But my DBA, she's on vacation. She can't do this for me. And I need to actually have this visualization to my director within an hour. What am I going to do? I can change this. All I have to do is type in what the correct value is. And since I'm doing this in default properties, that means every single time I bring this into my visualization now, it's done. I don't have to change this every single time. But it has not changed my database. But it has changed how my visualization is, and my visualization will show correct now. So let's go ahead and hit OK. And now look. Now my liberal arts is actually showing as liberal arts. It's not showing as engineering instead. I was able to do something that I wouldn't have been able to do before. When I was an analyst at Manpower, if something like this would have happened, this would have been weeks to change. And this would have been weeks where my boss is asking, where's this report, what's going on? And I don't have a response, I don't have an answer. But now with Tableau, I can actually change that, and I can deliver my product within minutes. Now I have these different drillable options for my visualization. Now let's collapse that. So let's look at the original. I had scroll bars at the bottom to see exactly what was going on. I had this filter at the bottom that I don't necessarily know what the heck to do with, and it doesn't really give me much meaning. But now I have a new visualization. Let's change that filter back to all, because I have a global filter, which I apologize. Do you feel like this one actually creates a better story than the original one? Who thinks so? Raise your hand. What about the interactivity? I have actually created options on here now where I am letting the end user drive how they interact with this, how they create the story, and maybe giving them additional details that they didn't have before. Now they can actually look at the different colleges if they want to, or if they just are interested in use type because they are part of maintenance or whatnot. You have a number of different audiences that this will actually address, not just one single audience instead. And it took, how long have we been talking now? Not very long at all. These are all changes that I was doing on the fly while talking to you. So we went over hierarchies, how to edit aliases, parameters. We did the custom mapping, and we also did tree maps. These are some of the things. This is what a typical dashboard would look like for you. And how you can, oh, I forgot to show you one more thing. Let me go back. The legend over here, the square foot one, where it was down here before. I had no way to actually tie back the size of my circle to my map itself. I had talked earlier that there's a floating option in Tableau. And this is actually one of my other best practices. If right-clicking doesn't do something, find the little carrot. It's like putting that carrot in front of the donkey, you know, to get it to go a little faster or to move. When you find those little carrots, and they'll show up when you hover over them, those will give you a menu of options as well. And when I do that, especially on a dashboard, on legends, on filters, I can do something called floating. And when I do floating, that means I can put it anywhere on my visualization. It literally is a float. So let's pick float. And now I can take an area of my map that maybe there's not a lot of data in, and now I can put it there. So it actually makes sense. And it ties directly back to that visualization as well. And that's exactly what I did on my example that I built out for you too. I have it in an area where it's not going to interfere with the visualization itself, but you can actually read it now. You know what the size is represented by instead. And you can actually make legends transparent as well. So you can see, if I go to format, you can see behind it. And especially with maps, you want to see those little details behind it. Or if you have a graph and you want to see the color that is behind it too, you can change the transparency on it to do that. And that is a couple of uses that I wanted to show you. I really found this one to be unique because I don't see this being used very often. So when I actually saw Purdue University was doing that with their campus, and then when I went to go look for higher education data sets and I saw this, I just kind of really latched onto it, and I knew that I wanted to do something with it, especially after showing you some of the visual analytics best practices, because they weren't applied directly to that. And I felt like the story could be better, that it could be more clear than it was. And that's kind of how it works with data too. I found that when you start working with Tableau, you kind of get excited about data in a way that you haven't been before, because you can change it drastically in just minutes. You can start that visual discovery, that data discovery that you haven't been able to before. It's not just a bar graph. It's not just a line graph. Now you can actually see things, because essentially what a map is a scatter plot. You have two different measures on an X and a Y axis. You're showing spatial analysis, and Tableau can account for that. But then tree maps, I have how many different uses just from that one that I put on there. And that kind of brings me to this next slide. Have fun with it. I mean, I feel like that's kind of one thing that is lost in visual analytics or BI, is that fun factor. I love my job. I do. And I don't know that I could say that a year ago before I started doing what I do today. But I have so much fun. I have fun creating things like what I just showed you. I mean, I was working after 5 o'clock last night building that out while my husband was making dinner. And if I was at Manpower working after 5 o'clock, it was like I probably would have been grumbling. But I have so much fun doing my job now. And this is actually a picture from the conference from last year at Washington, D.C. And every year when they do the conference, they actually do a big event one of the nights that you're there. And last year they rented out a place in DC called the Newseum. Has anyone heard of that before? Yeah, it's really an interesting museum that I had never been to before, but it's just that, it's news. And it's a whole museum around news. And they actually have part of the Berlin Wall is there too. And Michael, my boss over here, and I were there. And it was probably one of the most unique experiences I had. They rented out the entire place, and they had this huge sign hanging over. There's an enormous atrium, and it was about 4 stories tall, and it was all open in the middle. And it said, "Welcome to the party of the year." And it was so neat being in the same place with people who were excited about data, excited to do something with their data, excited to go back to work and start creating new solutions using Tableau. And so that's kind of the one thing in addition to some of the best practices that I talked about today. Have fun. Just have fun with it. Take those user groups, use them to your advantage, and learn from them, and have fun doing it, because that's what the people there are doing. So So that pretty much brings me to the end of my presentation with you today. And for those of you who think of additional questions after this, you can contact me. I'm in Madison quite frequently. I talk to Kathy quite frequently as well. I'm also actively involved, like I said, in the user groups. But if you have any questions from today's presentation as well, please feel free to connect with me.
So can you take some questions now?
Yeah, I am open to questions.
Should we turn up the lights a little bit, do you think? Or
It's a little dark. Is everyone taking a nap?
make sure everybody's awake? So, questions?
So suppose I'm sold on Tableau and want to start using it. What do I do as a UW person?
Say that again. I'm sorry. What was the first part of that?
So suppose I want to start using Tableau. What do I do?
What do you do? Well, I think part of that is going to be in collaboration as well. But if you want to start using Tableau, what you can do is you can contact us, and what we can do is create a quote for you around how much a Tableau license would be, because actually education or universities have a discounted rate for the actual Tableau license, which I also think is why it's very popular in higher education right now, because they want schools to use it. So what we could do is talk to whoever your purchasing person is and let them know how much it would be, and then we would give you a license key.
So there are a number of people across the UW system that have desktop professional licenses, and the cost of that is $1,500 for the year, or for the license.
Yeah, for the license, it's around $1,500
per desktop developer. So if you want to be a developer, create visualizations that you could publish either out to Tableau Public if there's not a security issue with the data, or to a server that either your campus has or will be getting at some point. That's what you need to be able to publish and create. And then there's maintenance cost in year 2 and after. And I'm trying to remember what that is. Does anybody? I think it's around $300.
It's $300 to $400, I want to say.
In that range.
We have Jean up here in the second to last row. She handles the UW-Madison account, though, so she can actually answer specific questions around that as well.
We've included a couple of sheets on the bottom right table there. If you'd like to take one, it shows the service offerings that we have as well, where Sarah and then one of her coworkers, Alex Christensen, is also a certified Tableau person. So we have those down there with their card and my card as well.
Yep.
So can you talk louder, or maybe repeat your question?
I'm a fan of small multiples as a Japanese concept, and does Tableau have a way of putting custom outlines that can be filled with measures or repeated?
What do you mean by custom measures?
Well, for example, you have a circle, and that's divided with white. Could that be the outline of a person? Could it be a gendered person? So the visual graphic.
If it's in your data, you should be able to.
Sarah, do you want to repeat the question?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Because small multiples means something else in Tableau, I think. Because small multiples, what it's showing is different trend lines within different members is what it is, essentially. So, yes, that's actually one of the knowledge base articles.
Well, what I'm asking is because you represent something meaningful with the type of graphic you use.
Yeah, definitely.
Like in the Viz Wars, they use little pirate ships, right?
Yeah, they actually have for male, female. They have custom shapes that you can change. Today we showed just your classic square and circle. Excuse me. They actually have a custom shape palette, but you can also create your own custom shape palette as well. But for the male, female, that is one that is out there. So if I changed shape, let's change this to shape instead. So let's bring my use type to shape. So now I have a shape. If I go to edit shape, I have a whole bunch of palettes actually around that. And gender is one of them.
So if I need a column,
You could load a picture of a cow and a pig, and you could actually have that. They have a bug one, though, so if you want to accomplish that through bugs, you could do that. But yeah, it really allows you to customize specific to whatever your use is. So if you want to show a demographic, gender, you could do that.
Is there an enterprise licensing schema that the university or university system could possibly engage with rather than individual clients and licenses having to be purchased?
It would depend on what the use is. Desktop does not have an enterprise option for that, but server has the option for that.
Yeah, what I know about that is universities that have purchased licenses in bulk up front. So, for example, 100, I think the price then was $13.50. So, in my thinking about that, the price break wasn't large enough to have the upfront cost and the management of the license is worth it. Tableau is a very in-demand product, so there isn't. But that price is higher ed discounted.
Yes, that is. Yeah, without higher ed discount, it's actually around $2,000.
The server, I can say a little bit about servers. So you could get user-based licenses for servers, and there is one on campus for, I think, 15 or 20 users. But as you can imagine, that doesn't go very far. We're exploring getting a core server license, which means that there are unlimited number of users, and so the smallest core is 8 core. Then it's concurrent users where you get degradation of performance. And so we're told that at approximately 100 concurrent users in an 8-core server, you would have degraded performance. And so we're looking towards getting an 8-core core server license and slowly roll that out. So that seems like the most effective way to do it. Let's see. Can you ask Sarah if you can publish to a campus server, or must you publish the Tableau server module?
I think I know what the question is asking, and that was actually a question a few of you asked during break as well, is how do you actually publish your visualization to an internal website? And there's a couple different options for that. Once you create a visualization in Tableau, you develop it in desktop, you need to then publish it to server. If you want to embed it then, like we had talked about how that's one of the top 10 trends for 2014, embedded BI, you want to put it on SharePoint or an internal website that potentially you have, you still need to publish it to server. What happens when you publish it to server then is it gives you a couple different options to actually share this visualization. And when you say, I want to share this visualization, it says you can either email it or you can actually get the code to embed it at that point. And it's going to give you exactly what you need to in order to embed it wherever that will be. So if you have an internal website, it's going to give you the code for that. If it's for SharePoint, it's going to give you the code for that as well. And then if it's a unique installation, once again, it kind of goes back to that whole forums on tablausoftware.com. There's people who have done this for every single instance that you can possibly think of. So even if you just Google embedding, you can do that. So I think that's what that question was.
Other questions?
Did you have fun? Was it useful? All right. Thank you.
So I really want to thank Sarah for the presentations and her preparation for them, and thank you for coming. I'm sure she'd be happy to answer questions if you want to come down and ask. And you can direct any questions to me as well in the future. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll actually be sticking around for a little bit if anyone did have Tableau-specific questions. We were going to do like a doctor sort of thing, so if you do use Tableau or you're thinking about it, we can definitely talk about that. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.